All right, so today we're diving into something pretty different, kind of mixing comedy, finance, and current events. We're going to be looking at this show called Laughimation Studio. And honestly, it's about as far from your typical financial news as you can get.
Yeah, right off the bat, you notice the format. It's all animation, these big, crazy characters. Even the host is wearing like a stock market bull hat. Definitely a creative way to get information across, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And it really makes you think, could this actually be a good way to learn about complex stuff? Like they have this segment, Newsflash, with a splat,
Mm?
where they use humor to talk about serious U.S. news. Like imagine a cartoon Fed chair explaining inflation with TikTok dances. What do you think about that approach?
Well, it could definitely make things more engaging, right? Especially for people who might normally find finance kind of boring or scary. Humor can be a really powerful tool. It sort of lowers people's defenses and makes them more open to hearing things. There's even research on the cognitive benefits of humor. It can help with attention memory, even creative thinking.
So it's not just about laughs then. It makes you rethink how we usually learn about finance and economics, which honestly can be pretty overwhelming at times.
Absolutely. And if humor helps break down those barriers and makes it all more approachable, well, that's a huge plus. But of course, there's always another side to things. Do you think there's a risk of oversimplifying these complex issues by using humor?
Hmm, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a tough balance to strike, for sure. You don't want to make light of important ideas. I'm definitely curious to see how they handle that. Okay, so besides the news, they also have this segment called Stock Market Shenanigans, where they basically poke fun at how volatile the market is. They compare it to a jello castle, which honestly isn't too far off sometimes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good one. It really gets at that underlying uncertainty in the market. It's easy to get caught up in the hype or the panic, but Laughimation Studio seems to be encouraging a lighter, maybe even more skeptical take on things.
Right. And they do it in such a clever way. Like they even have this fake stock tip where they tell you to invest in Animotion, this fictional company that makes cartoon stress balls. They even have a whole infomercial for it. It's hilarious. But underneath the joke, they're kind of hinting at the importance of diversification and not just blindly following financial advice, would you say?
Absolutely. It's like they're using satire to slip in some real financial wisdom. They're not just saying do this, but encouraging you to actually think about your investments. Instead of saying buy this specific stock, they're highlighting the dangers of those get rich quick schemes or
Yeah.
putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
They even have this character, Panic Pete, who's basically the poster child for nervous
Oh,
investors.
yeah, Panic Pete. He's great. He's either totally ecstatic when the market's up or completely freaking out when things dip even a little. He even tries to short sell avocado toast futures, meaning he bet the price would go down, but he ends up accidentally buying a whole guacamole factory. It's ridiculous, but I can't help but laugh.
Haha. It's brilliant. Because Panic Pete might be over the top. But he embodies those real emotions a lot of investors feel. The fear, the impulsivity, that tendency to overreact. It's a good reminder that investing isn't just about numbers and charts. It's about managing your own psychology too,
Yeah, for
your
sure.
own behavior.
It's like we all have a little Panic Pete in us, right? Especially when the market's going down.
Oh, absolutely. Laughimation Studio really seems to get that, those relatable experiences. They offer a humorous way to think about those ups and downs. They even have those life hacks for dealing with financial stress, which of course they present in a funny way.
Oh, yeah, right? Like the one where they say, you should just rebrand a stock market crash as limited time discount.
Exactly. Turn
Yeah.
that whole buying the dip idea on its head, joking about crying into the dip at your next party.
Huh, huh.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it also makes you think, could humor actually be a good way to cope with financial anxiety? I know I've definitely used humor to get through some rough times.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for finding the humor in tough situations. It can help you get some distance from the problem, see things from a new angle, and not get stuck in all the negativity. It's a way to feel more in control even when things are crazy. And there are studies that show laughter can release endorphins, which can boost your mood and even help with pain. So, yeah, in a way, laughter really can be good medicine, especially when you're dealing with financial stress.
It's like they say, hey, don't take yourself too seriously, even when it comes to money, which is usually a pretty serious topic.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about Laughimation Studio. They're not just giving you information, they're creating an experience. It's like they figured out how to make learning about finance and current events not just informative, but actually enjoyable.
Yeah, it's definitely different from those dry textbook approaches we're used to. They seem to have found that balance between entertainment and education.
I think that's the key. If you can get people engaged emotionally, make them laugh, Make them feel something. They're way more likely to connect with the material and remember it. Laughimation Studio definitely gets that.
So by using humor, they're not just making things easier to understand. They're actually making learning more effective.
That's the idea. They're using humor to break down those walls, make people curious, and ultimately help viewers feel more confident and informed about finance and current events.
Wow, that's pretty powerful when you think about it. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Laughimation Studio, what stands out to you most about their approach?
I think it's their ability to take these potentially scary topics and make them relatable and even fun. It's a reminder that learning doesn't have to be a chore. We can engage with complex stuff and still have a laugh.
Yeah, that's a message we can all use. It's about finding that balance between taking things seriously and not taking ourselves too seriously.
Exactly. And Laughimation Studio seems to have found that balance in a really unique and engaging way. They've created a space where learning about finance and current events is not just informative, but enjoyable and maybe even a little therapeutic.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Hi.
So, to our listeners out there,
Yeah.
if you're looking for a way to make learning about finance and current events more enjoyable, less intimidating, I highly recommend checking out Laughimation Studio.
You might be surprised how much you learn while having a good laugh. And in a world that can feel so overwhelming sometimes, a little laughter can go a long way.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even with complex financial systems and constantly changing news, there's always room for some levity.
For sure. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought. How effective do you think humor is in making complex topics more accessible? And could adding more humor to your own learning process be beneficial?
Those are some great questions. Something for all of us to think about as we navigate the world of finance and news and, well, life in general. Yeah, it makes you wonder if we'd all be better off if we just injected a little more humor into our lives, you know, especially when dealing with stuff like finances, which could be so stressful.
Right. Sometimes we get so caught up in how serious it all is that we forget to just step back and laugh a little. And as we've seen with Laughimation Studio, that change in perspective can be really powerful.
Yeah, it's like they're giving us permission to not take it all so seriously. And maybe that's the key, not just to learning, but to living a little more lightly, too.
I think you're right. It's all about finding that balance, recognizing that the information is important, but not letting it weigh you down, you know?
So for anyone listening who maybe tends to avoid finance or current events because it all just feels too complex or overwhelming, what would you say to them?
I'd say give Laughimation Studio a shot. It might just change how you think about these topics. It's a perfect example of how humor can be a gateway to understanding, to engagement, even to empowerment.
I love that. That's a great point to end on. It's a good reminder that learning should be enjoyable and that sometimes a little laughter is all it takes to open our minds up.
Couldn't agree more. And it looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive into Laughimation Studio.
It's been a pleasure exploring this unique and honestly refreshing approach to finance and current events with you.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We hope you've learned some new things, had some good laughs, and maybe even found a new way to approach learning.
Remember, a little bit of humor can make a big difference, especially when we're trying to make sense of finance and the world around us.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and don't forget to laugh.